back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, February 22nd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. But before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about Justin Fields, because I know that's kind of been a hot topic, not just on my show, but on other shows here on the GSMC Sports Network as well. We'll talk about his recent comments on the St. Brown podcast, the St. Brown brothers and their podcast. So we'll talk about that. Then for the second part of the show, we'll actually talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and some stuff I was reading about the impact of their security guard on the sidelines, Big Dom. So we'll talk about that and Nick Sirianni as well. Then we'll talk about some risk-reward free agents. There was an article on Bleacher Report that had some players that are going to be free agents listed, so we'll talk about that. And then in the final part of the show, we will get into talking about Justin Jefferson and his contract situation and what could transpire there. So that's the rundown for the show for today. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Justin Fields and what he had to say on the St. Brown Brothers podcast. So obviously, I think I did bring this up, that Justin Fields unfollowed the Bears on Instagram, and he started following players on the Falcons, and he was asked about this, and he said how he's going on vacation and he doesn't want any NFL, any Bears stuff on his timeline. So that's what he said regarding that. But what he also said was they asked if he wants to stay in Chicago, and this is what he had to say, and this is from an article on NFL.com. He said, "Yeah, of course I want to stay." And then he said, "If it was up to me, I would stay in Chicago. I love the city. The city's lit. The fans there, they're great, but it's a business. I got no control over it, so whatever happens, happens." And then he also said, "I feel like the biggest thing with all of this going on right now is I just want it to be over. Just let me know if I'm going to be traded. Let me know if I'm staying." And then regarding the social media stuff, he said, "Why do people take social media so seriously? I'm just trying to take a little break. I unfollowed the Bears and the NFL accounts. I'm just trying not to have any football on my timeline. I'm about to go on vacation. I don't want to see football." And then I guess they did ask him about the Falcons, and he said, I think they got a lot of playmakers on the team, of course. Bijan Robinson, they got Kyle Pitts, and then, of course, Drake London, too. They probably need one more receiver, but they definitely got some guys over there. The defense was good this year, too. So that's basically what he had to say, regarding the trade rumors and why he unfollowed the Bears. But yeah, I mean, I kind of understand. You just want it to be over because, this happens a lot. It's just you hear these, trade rumors in the media, and, they go on for a while, and you're saying to yourself, when is this ever going to end? Well, who knows when it's going to end? I mean, it's ultimately going to be It's going to come down to the Bears and, whether they want to keep Fields or if they're going to, want to take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. But again, I mean, if they do the third option, which is you keep Fields and you draft a quarterback, that would be a huge mistake. That would be a huge mistake. And I mean, listen, I think it's tough what the better option is, because if you go and you trade Fields and you draft another quarterback, well, you knew what you had in Fields. Now this is the unknown. When you're drafting a quarterback, what are they going to be like at the NFL level? Now, again, I think the Bears have they're building a nice supporting cast on offense. I talked about this, and they still have a top 10 pick outside of the number 1 overall pick. They have 2 top 10 picks. So they could always draft another, playmaker on offense. The team was improving, in the second half of the season. And, Fields looked better as opposed to the first couple games of the year. And it looked like the Bears were going to have one of the worst records in the NFL, but they turned it around. Now, in Fields' last game at Soldier Field, I mean, the fans were chanting for him. I think, I don't know, it's interesting, because there's probably some fans that don't want Fields, and then there's definitely fans like the ones that I just said were chanting for him, that they want him to stay. It's a tough call, but again, you got the number 1 overall pick, and look, you could get a major haul for that, and trade down and get more picks out of that, and then address some other areas on your team. But if you want to hit the reset button and draft another quarterback, one of these top quarterbacks, again, that's also another option too. But again, I know how he when he said he doesn't understand why people take social media so seriously. Yeah, I mean, you should know this by now. That is how people are. It's everywhere. I mean, it's not even just like in sports, but it's celebrities. Like if you see like a celebrity unfollow somebody, you're like, oh, that's not good. It's just that's what people do. They just overanalyze things, and even if it's nothing, I mean, he said it was basically nothing. He's like, I don't want to see that, but I mean, he could also be lying. That's also the other thing too, but. Yeah, I mean, listen, he should understand that people do take it seriously, and that's never going to go away. That's just the age that we live in, is with social media, people just take things way too seriously. They overanalyze by you simply just unfollowing somebody, unfollowing an account, and that's news. But we've seen that. I mean, we see when players are looking for new contracts. They they unfollow their teams, and you're just like, well, that player's gone. It's just, or they like delete posts of them, in the uniform, and that's another way the people analyze things. They're like, oh yeah, he's definitely not going to be on our team next year, but yeah, I mean, again, this is something that we'll keep an eye on with Justin Fields. I mean, the Falcons, I know that's been the one team that's kind of been in the news a lot. I mean, I know also with the Steelers, Mike Tomlin spoke highly of Fields as well, had some positive comments about Fields. So, but it doesn't seem like the Steelers are going to go that route. But yeah, I mean, this is something we'll see what ends up happening. But I think, again, if you're the Bears, yeah, don't do both. You either keep you keep the pick and you trade Fields, or you trade the pick and you get rid of Fields. Right? I said that. I said that right. Yeah, you keep the pick, trade Fields, or you keep Fields and you trade the pick. That's, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But, I mean, I honestly think, I really don't know what to think. Because, again, there's the unknown with if you draft a quarterback. And, if you keep Fields, I mean, listen, I thought Fields played better, when he came back from the injury. But at the same time, I don't think he's, an elite quarterback. I think as a runner, he's elite. It's just, he's got some things he's got to work on. Again, played better, but I don't know what I don't know how far the Bears could go with Fields. But again, I mean, you draft a quarterback, you draft another quarterback. Who knows what happens there? The Bears have kind of been in that constant cycle when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. I mean, you go back to when they traded up for Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, look what that turned out to do. Nothing. They I mean, 2018 was like their best shot because but that had more to do with their defense. I mean, Trubisky did have a good year, but that was because of their defense. Their defense was one of the best defenses in the NFL that year. And eventually they moved off of Trubisky. And then you get Fields. And, I mean, we'll just have to see what ends up happening. But it's a big decision. And I think, again, if you keep both and you draft a quarterback, I think that's a mistake. Because you want to address other areas. So, but only time will tell. Only time will tell. I mean, listen, you got quarterbacks that are available via trade. I mean, you also got the free agents at quarterback, and this is a QB class that teams are going to be looking to try to get these quarterbacks as well. So within the first two picks might be quarterbacks. So it's the QB carousel. We talk about the coaching carousel. We talked about the coaching carousel a lot. Well, the quarterback carousel. That's another carousel to keep an eye on as well. And listen, I mean, the Bears are that one of the teams that they gotta make a big decision. So, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I mean that's my thoughts on it. I mean, we didn't really get anything groundbreaking, but listen, he basically said, look, I unfollowed the Bears, I unfollowed the NFL just because I want to take a break, which again, you can understand that. But yeah, there wasn't anything noteworthy. I guess that's what I wanted to say. But yeah, I mean, listen, he wants it to be over, and I get that. But this is going to get dragged out for a little longer, so, we'll see what ends up happening there. But, yeah, so, actually, something else I wanted to touch upon. So, tomorrow, interesting thing here. So, tomorrow we're going to have a half-hour show with the football podcast. But also, so I'm going to have my hour show, but it's basically going to be divided up into two parts. So, at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, or 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I am going to be streaming the GSMC baseball podcast for one more time. I will be streaming it with the new GSMC baseball host, Sam. He's been doing a good job. He's been starting his shows the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to do a half-hour show with him because that's going to be the last time I ever... as a host of the GSMC baseball podcast, that's gonna be the last time I ever host that show. So that'll be for a half hour, and then for the second part, I'm gonna be doing a half hour show of the GSMC football podcast. So basically, from 10:30 to 11 is gonna be baseball, and then I'll be a little quick break, and then to set everything up and change everything I have here, then I'll come back and stream the football podcast for a half hour. So that's how tomorrow's gonna go. So make sure to tune in for that. Again, it'll be the final time that I host the GSMC baseball podcast, because that's how I started out, is doing baseball, and then I was switched over to football, and listen, a lot of changes here, and everybody's doing a great job. Again, happy it's not just, you got different perspectives now on different things. It's not just me, which is good. Everybody's been doing a good job with that. But yeah, so that's tomorrow. So tomorrow, half hour show of the GSMC baseball podcast, and then a half hour of the GSMC football podcast. So that's what's that's what's happening tomorrow. So I hope you guys tune in for that. It should be good. But yeah, so with that being said, so obviously, yeah, I mean, I basically said everything I needed to say about Fields. So when we come back from our first break, we'll talk about, well, a team we actually really haven't talked about in a while, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to talk about Big Dom's impact on the Eagles and kind of what went on after he got suspended from the sidelines. So that's what we will get into when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to now talk about Big Dom and his impact on the Eagles. So, yeah, for those of you that don't know who Big Dom is, he is one of their security guards. So I think he's the head of security, right? Yeah, head of security. Yeah, Dom DeSandro. Now, he was a part of that altercation with Dre Greenlaw when the Eagles played the 49ers. That was on December 3rd, and the Eagles lost that game 42-19, and that kind of began the downward spiral for the Eagles, was that game. But something else to note, so after this happened, and he was suspended from the sidelines. Now he did come back and he was on the sidelines for the playoff game against the Bucs. But yeah, so he was gone for he couldn't be on the sidelines for the rest of the regular season. And the Eagles ended up going 1-5. Now, something to note, so Nick Sirianni reportedly got into arguments with staff members and players on the sidelines following the incident involving the team's head of security. Players reportedly missed his presence during games, noting that the team hadn't been executing well or winning since his absence. Yeah, and again, this is when the Eagles started off 10-1. So he was responsible, supposedly, was instrumental in controlling Sirianni's emotions on the sidelines, and his absence led to Sirianni engaging in numerous arguments with players and coaches during games. Now, if that actually is true, it's a bad look on Nick Sirianni. It really is. Now, the one thing that I go back to, and this one isn't from this year, you go back to, the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. If you remember, I don't remember specifically what happened on the play, but if you know what I'm talking about, where he was like, I guess he was motioning to the Chiefs to come back, and you saw Jalen Hurts push his hand down. I feel like, which again, that was also a bad look too. I feel like with the Eagles, Nick Sirianni's kind of was feeling himself a little bit. These last couple of years. I mean, you got last year, and then you start off 10-1. There's also that clip of him, yelling at Chiefs fans after they beat the Chiefs in the regular season this year. Nick Sirianni was feeling himself a little bit. That's why I think what happened with the Eagles, I think that should have humbled him a little bit. Now, again, this is coming from a Giant fan, but I think a lot of fans would agree that, yeah, Nick Sirianni, for a lot of people, maybe isn't a likable guy. But this is a bad look. If you need your head of security to kind of calm you down, and stop, arguments from happening on the sidelines. I mean, you're the head coach. You have to be, yeah, obviously you're going to get mad at certain things, and, emotions are part of the game. I mean, again, you look at what happened with Travis Kelce and Andy Reid on the sideline. I mean, again, Travis Kelce almost knocked him over. But that, again, that's a player towards a coach. Now you got a coach towards a player, like, losing it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, coaches yell at players all the time, but I mean, I don't know what the specifics are with, these arguments that he's getting into with players, but I mean, you could kind of take some context clues on certain things that, Sirianni has done. Like I said, what happened in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, and say, yeah, maybe there's an issue there. And again, I mean, the team spiraled out of control, but I really have a hard time believing that was the reason why. So you're saying that he was the reason why the Eagles lost all those games? I mean, I think it's just because the 49ers really just demoralized them after the game. I mean, they won 42-19, and then the season just spiraled out of control after that. But yeah, so he was ejected, like I said, after the altercation with Dre Greenlaw. Again, they were 10-1. And it just, everything fell apart. I mean, they lost to the Cardinals. They lost to the Giants. I mean, they lost to some teams that were not very good this year. But I don't know. I have a hard time thinking it was just because of him. Now, like I said, if he's, someone that is there to kind of calm down Sirianni, well, that's, again, not a good look on Sirianni. But I don't think he's the reason why the Eagles collapsed. I think it's because, everything, again, the 49ers demoralized them. Then they lose to the Cowboys. Again, they lose to the Cardinals. They lose to the Giants. I mean, they almost lost the game. They almost gave the Giants the game in Philadelphia. I mean, they were, up by a couple of scores, and then, they fumbled on a kickoff. Giants scored a touchdown. There was a pick six. Giants scored Giants got a pick six off of that. I mean, the game was close. They should have ran away with that game, but they let the Giants come back. And then, I mean, you get to the playoff game against the Buccaneers, and he's back for that game, and they just, so it's because of Big Dom that the Eagles couldn't tackle. I mean, they just, like, could not tackle. It was some of the worst tackling I've ever seen. And I think it was just a team that just wasn't in it. I don't know. So I don't think it has to do really with him. I think it just has to do with the fact that the 49ers really kind of, like, took their hearts out, and they just were not in it the rest of the year. But I guess he had a significant impact because, I mean, you got players saying that, they just weren't, focused once he got, he got suspended from the sidelines. Because then actually the NFL came out and said something. So, I'm trying to find where, because I had it noted here. It was regarding like having security on the sidelines, if I can find it. Because I have it in my notes here. But yeah, I mean, they basically just said, like, they basically just said, like, you gotta, make sure that you guys are controlled down there. But I don't know where I have it in my notes, but whatever. You get the idea, though. But I can't sit here and say that that's the main reason that the Eagles fell apart. I can't say that. I mean, again, the Buccaneers game, that was some of the worst tackling that I've ever seen. So I can't sit here and be like, well, that's the reason why they fell apart at the end. I don't know why I can't find it. But regardless, the NFL did come out and say something regarding the incident. But yeah, I mean, listen, next year's a big year for Sirianni. It is. I mean, the Eagles have to be better next year. Because if they come out next year and it's more the same, yeah, then he has to be gone. Because, I mean, you had Eagles fans already talking about him losing his job. And this is after, the first 2 years, he made the playoffs. And, you make the playoffs this year, but, it kind of fell apart at the end. Now you're already talking about him getting let go. I don't know about that. But, I mean, the kind of collapse that they had, I mean, it's pretty close to, maybe, considering, maybe we need a change. But I think, listen, you lost two great coordinators. I mean, you lost Jonathan Gannon and you lost Shane Steichen. And the guys they brought in, it just didn't pan out. Now you got Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, so maybe things change. We'll just have to wait and see. But and the other thing too is, I also wanted to talk about Jason Kelce because so he hasn't officially retired, and it's interesting because you had I think they asked Kelce during media week about him, and he said no. I think he said like, oh, he's got some football left in him. Like Jason Kelce hasn't come out and flat out said I'm done. Now it looked like it was implied because he was emotional after the game against the Bucs, but yeah, that's just something to note. And I think from here on out, if unless the player directly says that they're retiring, I'm not going to be like, all right, well, he's retiring, because it was the media that kind of broke the news, and I just figured, all right, well, he was emotional, and it seems like, yeah, this is probably it, but yeah, he never came out and said he's retiring. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's another thing. Like, they lose Kelce on the offensive line. That's a huge loss there. That is huge. He's, one of the main reasons why the tush push works. So, they might not be able to do it as effectively next year if he's not there. But I mean, the defense, defense was just towards the end was really bad. So they're gonna have to fix the defense. I mean, bring in Vic Fangio, who's a good defensive coordinator. We'll see. What he could do with that defense. But, I mean, listen, the Eagles have a lot of talent. You also have people in the media coming out and saying that Jalen Hurts is overrated because of the offensive line, because of the additions of A.J. Brown, and you got Devontae Smith. Look at Jalen Hurts. I thought, his first full year starting. I mean, listen, the Eagles made the playoffs. And, then you added A.J. Brown, and that elevated his game. But I don't know if I want to say that Jalen Hurts is overrated. I think he's a good quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, he does, again, has a lot of he has a great offensive line. He's got good weapons. But, yeah, that's you want to surround your quarterback with talent. And he played really well in the Super Bowl that they lost. So I don't know if I want to say he's overrated, but yeah, I can understand why you may have that opinion. But it's going to be a big year for the Eagles because that collapse towards the end of the year. That was I still can't believe it happened. I really can. But they played a lot of close games this year, even the games that they won when they were 10-1. I mean, at one point the only loss they had was against the Jets, which I still don't know how they lost that game. But yeah, they did lose that game. Against the Chiefs, against the Bills, they were playing close. I mean, the Cowboys, when they beat them the first time, the Cowboys could have won that game. You look at both games against the Commanders were high scoring. One of them, I think, went into overtime. They played in a lot of close games. So it just eventually, then they played the 49ers, and yeah, that was just, that was the end of it. They just, they lost all that momentum, and it just led to a downward spiral. And, again, this stuff coming out with, their head of security and him kind of being there to calm down the head coach, if that's true, that's not a good reflection on the coach. So, let me know what you guys think about this. and what are your expectations for the Eagles? Very early expectations going into next year. So before I go into break, just want to remind you guys again, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about some risk-reward free agents for 2024. I'll talk about that when we come back from our second break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about some risk-reward free agents. I actually did find what I was looking for with the NFL regarding the last segment. So, yeah, they did send out a memo to teams reminding staff members of their prohibition from being involved in game day altercations. So, yeah, that's what I was looking for. But yeah, let's get into now the risk reward free agents. It's a tongue twister here. So so there was an article that I saw that talked about some free agents that, listen, you could take the chance on them, and if they pan out, you get rewarded. But there's also some risk that comes along with that. So there are 6 free agents. So let's talk about them. So the first one is Baker Mayfield. Now I think Baker Mayfield is going to eventually find his way back to Tampa. I think that would be the smart move. I again, like, you're going back. Well, they do have a new offensive coordinator, but the familiarity there, I feel like going elsewhere. I mean, who knows how that would pan out? I feel like with Tampa, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. But also, again, we've talked about the Bucs a lot. They got a lot of free agents. I mean, you got Mike Evans, who they got to try to bring back as well. That was, big part of Baker Mayfield's success in Tampa was Mike Evans. And if you lose Mike Evans, well, you still got Chris Godwin, and they got some other guys as well. Like Trey Palmer made some plays. Their young receiver, you got Cade Otton there, the tight end as well. But, yeah, I mean, losing Mike Evans would be huge. So, that's something the Bucs are going to have to figure out. But, yeah, I mean, it's still a risk reward because, listen, Baker's coming off of a great year, but, it's, again, it could end up not panning out and he ends up not playing well. Because, again, at one point during the season, the Bucs were 4-7. It didn't look like they were going to go anywhere at that point, but then, then Baker got hot, played well the second half of the season, and they were able to get in. But, listen, I like Baker Mayfield a lot, but I don't look at him as, he's not, I don't think he's, up there as an elite quarterback. But I think he's solid, but, I mean, he could definitely, if the Bucs pay him, I could definitely see a scenario where he comes back next year and they don't play as good, and especially because I think the division's going to be better. I think if the Falcons figure it out at quarterback, I mean, they're going to be better. The Saints with Derek Carr, and I mean, we'll see how they figure out this cap situation because they're $80 million over the cap, 80 plus. It's ridiculous, but that's where they're at. And listen, even though the Panthers were not good this year, I mean, they still they played some close games with the Bucs. You know, the 21-18 game, and listen, the Panthers, they had 2 touchdowns, but one of them was a touchback because the receiver fumbled, and then you had another touchdown that got called back. So if those touchdowns don't, you know, if the fumble doesn't end up happening, if the penalty doesn't end up happening on the touchdown run, Panthers win that game probably. So, you know, we'll have to see, but I think if Baker comes back to Tampa and you bring back Mike Evans, I think he'll be good next year. But you know, again, if he comes back to Tampa and they lose Mike Evans, yeah, it's going to be a big problem. So you also, yeah, and that's the other thing too, and it said it in the article. Teams may, you know, you're taking a risk because you want to see if this was a 1-year thing or is it sustainable. That's really what it comes down to. And then the next one is a guy I talked about yesterday, and that's Saquon Barkley of the Giants. Now, I think, yeah, he's definitely risk-reward because, you know, like if the team gets Saquon Barkley, because, again, it doesn't look like the Giants are going to franchise tag him, and I think if that's the case, I think he's going to end up going elsewhere. But, again, we'll see. You know, wherever he ends up, if Barkley's healthy, yeah, you're getting a big reward out of that. And there are definitely some teams out there that need help in the running game. You know, the Ravens, the Texans. You know, I know there's stuff floating out there about, you know, Harbaugh wanting Saquon with the Chargers, you know, if they don't end up bringing back Eckler. So, yeah, I mean, those are better situations than the Giants. But the problem is durability. Barkley has missed time over the last, you know, he's been injured a lot. You know, 2022 he was healthy, and we saw what he did in that season, his rookie season as well. You know, but all the other years he's been hurt, and that's the risk part is, you know, him getting hurt. But you know, when he does play, but I think also that has a lot to do with just the team that he's playing for, the Giants. Because I mean, the Giants had, you know, he stepped into. When he was drafted, I mean, the Giants just did not have a good offensive line. They have not had a good offensive line in all the years, really, that he's, you know, been in the league. You know, and you go to another team that actually has a good offensive line. I mean, who knows what he could do? I mean, but he is getting older. That's the other thing, too. Now he's 27, which, I mean, now we're saying, yeah, 27, that's, you know, a bad year for a running back. So that's the other thing, too. But I think Barkley still has a couple of good years left. But again, I think it's got to be in the right situation. You know, I think with the Giants, you know, it's just they have so many other areas that they need to improve on that, you know, I just think he's better off going elsewhere. But we'll see what the Giants, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening there. But I feel like with him, though, I feel like you'd get more of a reward out of it than a risk. But I think, he has had some freak injuries. Like in the Cardinals game in this past season, I mean, he got his leg caught underneath somebody. Yeah, and that was why he got hurt. You know, it wasn't just like he ran the wrong way and, you know, he had a non-contact injury. A lot of it has been contact, you know, so... yeah, but I think whatever happens with Barkley, I think wherever he goes, I think he will produce. Because again, there's a lot of situations out there that are better than the Giants. The Giants have they're you know, closer to the bottom, you know, and I think if Barkley goes somewhere else, I think, you know, if he go, I would love to see him with the Texans. You know, the Ravens, a team that loves to run the ball, except in the AFC Championship game. That would be a great spot. You know, the Chargers with Herbert and that offense with Harbaugh, I think that would be those are much better situations than the Giants. So for him, I'm kind of hoping he goes elsewhere, but because for the Giants, they have so many issues. But yeah, so now some of the other players here, Marquise Brown, again, a wide receiver that has a lot of talent, but has kind of been slowed down by injuries. You know, they brought him in to pair with, you know, DeAndre Hopkins, but that just never really materialize. Because last year, DeAndre Hopkins I think he was suspended. So, and then I think Marquise Brown got hurt. So we never really got to see them together. But yeah, I mean, listen, you go back to his Ravens days. I mean, he shows potential, but it just hasn't really been consistent. So we'll see where he ends up being on the free agent market. I mean, listen, I think if you need a receiver, I mean, maybe he goes to the Chiefs. That's one team that I could think of. That listen, the Chiefs are a team that need receivers. So I mean, Marquise Brown, he'd step in. I mean, you're not going to be the top option, but you could be that deep ball guy you could add that dimension back into the Chiefs offense, if you get him. But we'll see. And then a few other guys here. So Tyron Smith of the Cowboys, their left tackle. Now, again, was one of the best left tackles in the NFL for a long time, was a part of that great offensive line. It's been part of that great offensive line for the Cowboys for many years. The 2014 team, 2016. But yeah, he's getting older. He's 33. He actually earned his second team All-Pro honors in 2023. But yeah, I mean, the problem with him, injuries. He has been injured a lot. If I can actually, let me see if I can pull up his injury history. But yeah, I mean, listen, he was coming off of a relatively healthy 2023. Again, he stays healthy. Yeah, I mean, you're getting a big reward out of that, and a guy that can cover your quarterback's blind spot. But again, it's injuries are a concern, and that's really with a lot of guys. Is if they play, yeah, but if they end up getting hurt, that just that ends up hurting your team. But let's see if I can. Yeah, so I think I have his injury history here. So, yeah, he's been injured a lot. I mean, 2020 neck injuries, 2021 a neck injury, ankle. He missed a lot of time. And I see the report. Yeah, he's not retiring, but he hopes to remain with the Cowboys. But yeah, I mean, listen, if he ends up going elsewhere, you're getting a good player. If he's healthy, but if he's not, then but yeah, I mean, again, you get the idea. He's been injured a lot. So we'll see if he ends up staying with the Cowboys. If he ends up leaving, only time will tell. Then we also got Chase Young, another player that's dealt with injuries, but talked about his production kind of dipped in his contract year with the 49ers. Being traded over there. And there's questions about consistency. And he's only 24, so the potential is still there. But yeah, I mean, listen, again, I'm going to go back to it. The Jahmyr Gibbs rushing touchdown in the NFC Championship game, and it looks like he didn't even try on that play. That wasn't a good look. But in the right situation, he could produce. I mean, maybe the 49ers, maybe they possibly bring him back. I don't know. We'll see. But that's another player as well that's listed here. And then also the last player they had listed was Jalen Johnson, the corner of the Chicago Bears. Had a breakout year, but there's questions about his consistency and durability. Showed improvement in interceptions and passer rating allowed, but needs to prove his performance is sustainable. So kind of like, again, like some of these other guys, like Baker Mayfield, was that year with the Bucs just a one-year thing, or is that going to be something that's going to be consistent over the course of years? So yeah, despite interest from the Bears, Johnson will need to demonstrate continued growth to justify a big money contract. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I feel like if were to rank them, I mean, I feel like someone, again, if Saquon Barkley leaves the Giants, someone's going to offer him a contract that kind of close to maybe what he wants. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll just have to find out. I mean, again, free agency, the offseason, that's going to be something that we're going to talk about a lot. And obviously the draft as well in the coming months. So But let me know what you guys think about these players, and if there's a player that wasn't listed, is there another player that's a free agent that you would say is a that falls under this category? Because some of these guys, they could return to the teams that they've played for, like Tyron Smith again says he hopes he remains with the Cowboys, but again, only time will tell. Only time will tell. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we're going to talk about Justin Jefferson, and we'll talk about his contract and what could possibly happen there, and that will be the final part of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Justin Jefferson and his contract situation. I feel like I've been doing that a lot with players in contract situations and quarterback situations, but yeah. So I kind of labeled it as just contract talk, the segment here. But so yeah, article I was looking at. Talking about Justin Jefferson and, when he was asked about his, contract situation. This was at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. Basically he expressed his desire for a new contract during an interview at Super Bowl's Radio Row. He talked about his desire to stay with the Vikings, but also wants a new deal that reflects his value, potentially making him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. He does believe the Vikings will eventually prioritize keeping him. He also did talk about the uncertainty about the situation at the moment. They actually were close to reaching a new deal before the start of the 2023 season against the Bucs, but that ended up not happening. He's currently entering the final year of his rookie contract in 2024 and is due to earn $19.7 million. Of course, missed 7 games because of the hamstring injury. Cut his season a little bit short, but he still finished with over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. But yeah, so here are his stats over all of his seasons. So 397 receptions, 5,899 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 57 starts. He's been selected to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 3 seasons and was named first-team All-Pro in 2022. His next contract is expected to be a long-term deal and could command upwards of $30 million per season. Talked about how, grateful for the Vikings for drafting him, but he is also open to other options if it ends up not being with the Vikings. And it also mentioned how the Vikings drafted Justin Jefferson with the 22nd overall pick in the draft, which they got when they traded Stephon Diggs. So what a great replacement he was for. Even more so than Diggs. He's looked at as the best wide receiver in the NFL. But yeah, we'll see if that ends up happening. But, the Vikings, they got some question marks with the quarterback situation because, what are they going to do? Are they going to bring back Kirk Cousins or are they going to try to, do something else? Because, I don't think it doesn't look like Jaren Hall is going to be the guy, because they put him in. Well, so he started against the Falcons, gets hurt. They put in Dobbs, But then they had it was weird because they had him start against the Packers, and he did not look good. He did not look good. So then they just threw in Nick Mullins, but by that point the game was already way out of reach. So yeah, I mean if it ends up not being Kirk Cousins, I mean I don't think it's going to be a quarterback on the roster. You got to look somewhere else. But yeah, I mean listen, this is big because again, this is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL when he's healthy. And I mean, the Vikings are going to do everything they can to make sure that he stays because losing him would be devastating for this team. You know, and listen, if Kirk Cousins if Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson both don't get hurt, I mean, who knows what happens with the Vikings because they started playing much better. I mean, they beat the 49ers. You know, they were on a roll. And then Kirk Cousins, unfortunately, you know, tears his Achilles in the game against the Packers in Lambeau. And that kind of derailed their season. I mean, I thought at one point they were still going to make the playoffs because, you know, Josh Dobbs came in and he was playing well. But then, you know, you had the bad Monday night loss against the Bears. The Broncos game, they lost a close game there. You know, it just... And Nick Mullins, I mean, listen, he was putting up a ton of yards, but was turning the ball over a lot. So, yeah, it just it was unfortunate what happened with the Vikings. Because you know, again, if they don't get hurt, you know, who knows what ends up happening if they end up making the playoffs. But yeah, it's again, the Vikings are going to do it. I think the Vikings will eventually, you know. They'll get it done. I think they will because again, this is one of the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably. Like you're really gonna let him walk? I mean, obviously, yeah. When it comes to paying him, you might have to overpay, but I think for him it's worth it. I mean, you know, the numbers speak for themselves. Again, despite missing, like I said, 6 games, you know, he still put up over 1,000 yards receiving. So, yeah, I think this is a player you got to do that for. I just want to pull up. Yeah, so you go back to so from 2020 to 2023. So 1,400 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns, and I think he actually did miss some time in 2020 as well. I think he missed like the first couple games, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in 2020 he played in 60. Oh yeah, he missed. I think he missed the first game. Yeah, because he only played in 16 games. But yeah. 1,400 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. Then 2021, 1,600 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. Then last year in 2022, 128 receptions, 1,800 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And then, yeah, like I said, missed 6 games. Had 1,074 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Yeah, I mean... Listen, the guy is an absolute stud, and again, he was a great he became the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably after them trading Stephon Diggs and getting him. I mean, that ended up working out. That ended up working out for both sides. I mean, I know both sides haven't gone to the Super Bowl, but I mean, Diggs what he's done in Buffalo, he's been great for them. Although people are talking about him declining. And, Jefferson became, one of the top receivers in the NFL. So that ended up working out. Okay. But, yeah, I mean, this is something, again, got to keep an eye on. I think the Vikings are going to do everything they can to try to keep him. But, I think the other thing is the quarterback situation. Because, again, are they going to bring back Kirk Cousins? Are they not? And on top of the Achilles injury, he's also getting older. I mean, I think he's 35. So, yeah, I mean, he's not going to be around for the entirety. He's still got some good years left if, he's able to rebound from the Achilles injury, which I think he's going to. But, again, got to see it when, he takes the field next year. But, yeah, so, again, something to keep an eye on. But again, if they don't bring back Kirk Cousins, I'm curious to see what the Vikings do then. Do they try to trade for somebody? Do they, you know, I don't know what, I mean, I guess where are they picking in the draft actually? Because I guess maybe like if they wanted to trade up, possibly. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So the Vikings currently, they hold the 11th overall pick. Okay, so maybe you could get one of, I mean, you're not going to get Caleb Williams, you're not going to get Drake May, but maybe you get one of these other quarterbacks that could be available. I mean, I guess if you want to go that route. Because, again, I don't think the quarterback you have is on the roster if you don't bring back Kirk Cousins. You know. But we'll see. That's another thing, too. You know, and if the Vikings quarterback situation isn't, up to Jefferson standards, and yeah, I mean, he's probably going to want out. But, again, we'll see. So, I don't know. Maybe the Vikings go that route. Maybe they move up a couple spots and they, grab somebody they may like in the draft. Because, again, I mean, Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles injury. I mean, you don't know how he's going to be. I mean, I think he'll be good, but that's just, I mean, I don't really have anything I'm basing that off of. I just think, I think he'll bounce back, Now with Aaron Rodgers, who's, older than him and is in his 40s now, that's a little different, so, but I don't know. For me, I have a feeling that Kirk Cousins will bounce back, and we'll see. But again, just he was having a great year, and then he ends up getting hurt. So, only time will tell. Only time will tell with what happens there. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Does Justin Jefferson eventually get what he wants from the Vikings, or you see a possibility where he ends up, leaving and going elsewhere? But yeah, so that's that topic. So again, I just wanted to remind you guys. So tomorrow is going to be a little different, like I said earlier in the show. So I'll be streaming the GSMC Baseball Podcast one more time with the new GSMC Baseball Podcast host, Sam. So that will be from 10:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And then shortly after that, I will do a half-hour show of the GSMC Football Podcast. Now, I don't exactly have anything planned at the moment to talk about tomorrow, but since it's only a half-hour show, I mean, I'll figure it out. With the baseball one, it's just going to be off-season and previewing the season coming up. And actually, we have our first spring training game today. It's between the Padres and the Dodgers, so we got some baseball finally, which is nice. And we still got some big free agents out there that need to be signed, which is strange. But yeah, that's talking about contracts. Yeah, these players don't have a contract. They're still on the market. So we'll see when they eventually sign. But yeah, so that'll be tomorrow. That'll be the last time that I officially host the GSMC Baseball Podcast, because I know that's how I started out. I was doing that 5 days, and then switched over to football and doing that 5 days. And then the baseball podcast was just every Friday, then every other Friday, and now it's now we got a new host. So and like I said, we've got everybody doing a great job across the board with all the new hosts that we have now here at the GSMC Sports Network, which again, it's great. It's nice that it's not just me, because that's what it was for a long time. It was just me, but that's not the case anymore, which is nice. So, but yeah, that's the rundown for tomorrow. Again, hope you guys enjoyed the show, and make sure to leave a comment on all the stuff we talked about, whether it's the Justin Fields stuff, the Big Dom stuff with the Eagles, any other risk reward free agents that you may that I didn't talk about in the last segment that you you may have, and then obviously with the Justin Jefferson contract stuff, a lot of contract situations, I don't know. Could Justin Jefferson become the latest wide receiver? I mean, you also got Brandon Ayuk with the 49ers as well, looking for a new contract. So, could they be the latest wide receivers that get traded? I mean, you saw that with A.J. Brown, and you saw that with Devontae Adams. I mean, it's crazy, that ends up happening. I mean, but now look what ended up happening with the Titans. I mean, Tannehill's now gone and going to be gone. Mike Vrabel ended up losing his job. Now, I'm not saying that, they had to do that. That had to do with the front. Well, the general manager ended up getting let go too. I mean, he was really the cause of that. I mean, the Titans kind of fell apart after A.J. Brown got traded. But, Devontae Adams, I mean, the Packers are fine. They look like they're going to be a good team again for a long time. Devontae Adams, we'll see what happens with the Raiders. But yeah, I mean, Justin Jefferson, is he good? Only time will tell, what ends up happening there. But we'll see. So yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be back again tomorrow. Again, streaming the GSMC Baseball Podcast for one final time for a half hour, and then the Football Podcast for a half hour shortly after that. So until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.